Good evening and welcome to Something to Talk About. I hope you're having a nice evening. We're ready to have a nice conversation. Here's something interesting. The judiciary of Guam is looking for interpreters, people who can speak an array of languages to help assist in justice. We're going to talk to a couple of ladies who know everything about this registry program, and maybe if you have ever spoken another language that can be assisting the court system on Guam, there could be a little bit of maybe a career and a whole lot of money, maybe. We'll talk about that on Something to Talk About. Come on back. And good evening. Welcome again to King's Restaurant and our guests, as we talked about in the studio here with us at King's Restaurant, where they serve us fruit every single week, and we're so grateful for that. We've got a couple of really cool guests talking about a topic I think that has come around most recently. I think that the more diverse that Guam gets, the more diverse our criminals become. They are with the Superior Court's Judiciary Court Interpreter Registry Program. I want to introduce to you the lovely Danielle Rossetti. She's with us as the Superior Court Clerk of the Court, right? Oh, whew. And then June Bells Carino, she's a Language Assistance Manager from the Judiciary of Guam. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome,
Hi.
ladies, and thank you so much for coming in and joining us tonight. I kind of said that, the more diverse Guam gets, right, the kind of more diverse our criminals become too, right? And that just sort of comes with the territory, if you will. Tell me about this program. How new is it? How recent has Guam Court been looking for people to translate?
We obviously, clearly, with our judicial proceedings for all cases that come before the court, we've always had interpreters present and available for cases. But in the course of the last couple of years, I want to say about 4 years or so, yes. We have started our court interpreter registry program, and what that basically means is we do have registered court interpreters that are qualified. They go through a training with us and are given the various aspects of what to expect in a courtroom proceeding, and we then provide the assistance in courtrooms for court patrons that come before the court that do not have that have the limited English proficiency, or for hearing impaired. That's the service that we provide in order for them to get meaningful access to the proceedings.
How has it been done in the past? Because this is not the first time that we've had people who spoke a different language outside English.
No, and my understanding was that in the past it would be, we needed an interpreter, and did we know anyone that can interpret Korean? We call them and come in, but now with the training that we have, and the qualifications that they need to complete before they go in, take that code of conduct oath, and appear before the judge and interpret with the defendants in criminal cases.
So the difference between then and now has been the training.
The training and the program that we organize, and before it was just several different chambers calling up their own lists, but now we have one list for the entire court.
Yeah, so it would seem to me that there's this is a list of credible translators. Was that the issue before? Had you ever run into a situation where not the correct information was being translated?
I don't believe we ever had any specific challenges to interpreters that were appearing before, but what we saw over the course of in the last couple of years was the increase in the demand for wanting interpreters, and under the leadership of then former Chief Justice Philip Carbolito and now Attorney General Elizabeth Vargas, they thought, we need to come together and make sure that we have some program for the cases that we have before our court. So we have interpreters that appear for criminal cases, juvenile cases where parental rights are at issue, protective order cases. So there are a mixed variety of service that we provide for.
Was there a delay in court proceedings because there might not have been somebody who spoke a specific language that you were looking for?
We have seen in a few instances, for example, if we only, at one point we had only one Japanese interpreter, and so if there's a need for more than one, and we have to go to trial, we can't go to trial. So because we need an interpreter now, if we what we have opted to do is if we don't have a registered Japanese interpreter or some other language available when we do need to proceed with the case, the judges are given a colloquy that they would question the interpreter. So we find somebody like we did before and say, they come in and they take the oath, and then they are given a colloquy, asking a couple of questions, and then they will be used in the proceeding.
Yeah, but now it's a sort of refined program with training involved.
Yes.
I got to ask you. I mean, is there a living that a person can make? I hate to think that a person can make a living spending full time in court, doing just this. That just suggests that we've got, really high numbers of criminals that come through the court system, which I'm sure that is already. But, can somebody make a living off of doing this?
I think, we currently have a full-time court interpreter with the court, Will Stinnett, and he primarily handles the Chuukese interpretation.
Right.
He does the classes. So when we talk about court interpreters appearing and providing the service, we clearly are not just talking about appearing in the courtroom. These interpreters appear with the attorneys and their clients for appointments. So oftentimes they may have to go to the detention center.
So are they full-time employees of the court, or are they contracted?
They're contract. Right now,
Okay.
our registry has about between 50 and 55 registered court interpreters, and Will Stinnett's the only full-time. So when you're on call based on the need, and you can make a living if it's a language that's highly requested.
Well,
So-
I interviewed a woman several years ago, and I'm not sure if you still use her services, but she spoke Chuukese, and she would. I mean, she was a really busy lady. Her husband, I think, was a businessman or something, and they finally moved to Guam. But she was called from court systems throughout all the jurisdictions in the U.S. at every time of the day to help because of, Chuukese citizens who might have gotten into trouble with the systems there. And she said that's all she had time to do. She, in fact, had to quit her full-time job because that's all she, had time to do. How do you determine which languages are needed? I can understand some of the ones that the standard, what do we have that was originally standard? Chamorro, Japanese, Chuukese,
Korean, Mandarin and Cantonese, Chinese.
Okay, so those were the original languages. And
Korean.
Okay. And then what have we now expanded into, or what do you need to expand into?
We did have one Russian interpreter, but she's moved off island now, Nadia.
Yes.
So we want to expand on that. Our Eastern languages. We've also had the outer islands of Yap. We have Satawalese, Woliayan, and
Are they different dialects?
they're different dialects.
Wow.
So
Okay.
the really outer islands of Yap and the outer islands of Chuuk. So it depends on how do we determine it's what the client requests of what specific dialect. Because
I
even
know-
in Chuuk, there's mainland Chuukese and outer island.
Okay. Well, I noticed in the news release that you're also looking for people who speak Greek. How can you tell me? Are you able to expound on the need for Greek speakers?
We put that on the press release because we've had one request last year for Greek. And we reached out to the community because we don't have any right now. So it depends on what comes in.
Yeah.
We don't have any Thai interpreters, so
Okay.
what we're trying to do is reach out and collect applicants so we can build our pool of interpreters. So when there's a need, we'll have.
Let me ask you: if you find, for example, somebody who speaks Greek and they're military, they're not necessarily going to become, an employee of the judiciary. You're contracted out. Is it the same sort of concept as working as jury duty? When you're called to a trial as needed, it's the same concept.
Yes.
Pretty much, unless, of course, depending on the scheduling, if you're needed on a more regular basis, you would know in advance. This is our schedule for the month. We need you on these days.
Yeah.
Based on judges' calendars.
Okay, so once they apply, well, it's the person who's applying, which is different than jury duty, because when your jury duty it's not voluntary. So when you're applying, then you are sort of committing your time at the court's will to participate in when needed.
But we also look at them as independent contractors, so we always come up with the terms that you can say no to us. We just want to have the list, have you on our list, because you're an independent contractor. You can say, yes, I'm available
I see.
at this time or not.
So you couldn't, you know,
can't
somebody
force
isn't
them.
subject
Yeah, we can't
to
do- have
arrest
to
if they
be.
didn't show up, like
Right.
like a juror might be subject to that.
Right.
So what would you do in a case like that, in a very specific language that had few speakers, for example, Greek?
Yes, we
Yeah.
call everywhere. We reach out to the community,
Yeah.
the embassies. There's no Greek embassy on Guam, but
Yeah, right.
somebody told me there was a Greek restaurant, so we've called
Oh, I didn't know
them.
that. There's a Greek restaurant?
Yeah.
Wow.
So-
we'll have to go find them too.
That's why we're trying to send out the press release. So
Okay.
by word of mouth and through UOG and GCC. We also have a monthly group that meets made up of government and non-government agencies who have the same agenda in mind. They want to organize interpreters like the court has. So.
We'll take a quick break here. We're talking about this program, which I think is actually very interesting. Guam is kind of growing up in that way, unfortunately, but Guam is kind of growing up. We'll be right back. Good evening. We're talking about the Judiciary Court Interpreter Program. This is an interesting program because you guys have been trying to assemble different people who speak different languages other than English. And during the break, we were talking about, what are the easiest ones to get and some of the ones that are hardest. I was surprised to hear that Japanese is hard to, a Japanese speaking person is hard to get.
Yes, how many Japanese interpreters do you have?
Right now, on our list, we have 4 Japanese interpreters, but because they're not full-time employees at the court and they're independent contractors, they have their own outside jobs, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, or they own businesses.
Yeah.
So they have prior commitments, and because this is a on-call, as-needed basis,
Yeah.
at one time they were all unavailable. So
Yeah.
we
So
want to expand our list.
So I want to ask you, when it becomes difficult to find somebody on the island who could provide the service, can you seek from other jurisdictions somebody who could provide the same thing if they are already trained and registered in another court system, another jurisdiction?
Yes, so clearly the Court Interpreter Registry Program is not something that is new
Right.
to courts across the nation. In many other court jurisdictions, what is different from our jurisdiction is that they have certified interpreters, which is a higher standard level of certification for court interpreting. And some of our registered interpreters have been we've been contacted from other court jurisdictions to utilize some of our languages here, and they do what we call remote interpreting.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
in one
it's
instance
been the
though,
reverse, Patty. They've reached out to us
To
for-
find, yeah.
But I don't see that as a problem. I think if there really was a need that we couldn't get a Greek interpreter, for instance, we'd reach out to our other court jurisdictions to see if we can get an interpreter available.
When you have somebody here who's, living on Guam, they're not necessarily citizens of the United States, and maybe not even necessarily familiar with the American justice system, isn't that key to pretty much everything, to understand what the system is like, what it is you're doing in a courtroom?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I do know, for example, when we had the DeSoto trial.
Yeah, I was thinking of just that.
We had to do some type of a background.
Yeah.
And that's why clearly when they're registered or they're certified interpreters, they kind of have a basic understanding of the process of
Right.
interpreting, because we train them how to interpret for courtroom proceedings. But when you just kind of bring them in, we have seen in some instances where there is an interpreter that is not available, attorneys will bring in someone to interpret.
Of their own.
And then the judge will, of course, ask questions of the interpreter about their qualifications. And as we mentioned earlier, there's a colloquy that goes on, and then if there's
Yeah.
no objection from the other side, they can be used.
So do you have, in an instance like that, do you have one person who's speaking the language and another person who is monitoring to see if that translation is correct?
Well, it's always the power of 3. So there's the interpreter, there's the LEP, the limited English person is what the clients are termed, the ones who are limited in their English.
Right.
And then the third party is always the lawyer or the judge or the person who's conducting what needs to be conducted. So the interpreter's never there alone providing service directly.
Okay.
They always have to interpret, and
There's
that's
nothing.
their role.
Okay, so there's nothing real. I mean, how do you safeguard against there being a loss in translation?
they have to follow the code of conduct, so they
Yeah.
understand that they can't just go out on their own and just start advising people. They're not lawyers, and they're not there to be the judge and jury.
Yeah.
So they have to remember their roles just to interpret.
But they're all familiar with a justice system,
Yes,
if not the
yes.
American justice system, with some sort of democratic justice system.
Yes.
They're familiar with it.
A lot of times when the clients are asking them because they speak their language, they usually say, "What do I say? I don't understand. What's the best thing to do?" And they always say, "You have to ask your lawyer. You have to ask the judge."
Yeah, because then I just want to know how the judge would monitor this conversation and make a ruling either way if an attorney is asking a question that might be sort of leading or not, within the structure.
Or Wilstonet does it all the time, and sometimes the LEP clients don't like it. So when they get into that situation, they will say something like, "What do I say here?" And we'll completely interpret, "What do I say here?" And the judge and the lawyers will get clued in on what's happening and say,
yeah.
"Well, did you speak with your client?" and directly speak to the attorney.
Yeah.
The interpreter's just interpreting in the court proceeding. And that's different from the other interpreting assignments for education, community, and for the hospital. So
Yeah, I got to ask you about that, because if you've got your own sort of working list for the court, that must
Right.
be a prized list for every other service. The GPD, for example, like you mentioned, GMH. How do you get around that? I mean, is it a small pool? I mean, you're already dealing with a small pool.
I think for what we do is we ask for their permission first before
Yeah.
we can give their contact information out to these other government agencies. But what we then do is, we kind of tell them, we really would encourage that you keep your scheduling to what we do at the court, because if you're someone that's being regularly used at the court, we want to make sure that if you do decide to go full-time with GMH, that we know, because it's constant. The wheels of
Yeah.
justice just can't stop.
It can't
Right.
stop. Yeah, that's the
Right.
danger of it. But what if you? All right. So what about interpreters for the Guam Police Department, for example? Are you encouraging them to start their own list, because the systems aren't the same, right?
they're not the same.
Yeah.
And interpreter who's working at the hospital deals with different terms than with someone working at the court. And so education is the key, and
Yeah.
training. So right now, the court is the only one that organizes interpreter training. And I know Department of Public Health is also coming into the
Yeah, they're
They're
coming. Yeah,
joining in,
they
yes,
well,
as
they
well.
have to.
Yes.
They have to. Wow, I think it's an incredible program, and like you said, it really is relatively new. What's the budget for something? You don't have to give me the number, but I mean, you had to obviously create a budget out of a very small amount of money.
In the course of the last couple of years, we have seen an increase in the amount that we've paid out. So there's a demand, and I think last year it was about maybe 98,000, almost 100,000 interpreter services for the cases that we have. We have about 50 interpreters right now, registered interpreters that we utilize year round. So.
And that's both in civil and criminal cases that
Civil,
these.
criminal, protective order cases, and it's
Protective order.
not just in the court, but also when they meet with their clients outside of the court.
attorney-client meetings.
Okay, so do the attorneys share the cost of this as well?
No, we provide the interpreter
provide it.
service.
Oh,
I mean, it's
so they don't share the cost as well.
Well, for our criminal cases, what we do is,
I was gonna say that-
the indigent cases, we do provide the interpreter. We just coordinate with the attorney, they make the request, and we put them on schedule, and then sometimes
And
Yeah.
if private attorneys request, we can give them the list, but we have to tell them you would do the direct contacting,
with the
and payment will be between you and the interpreter.
Okay. So what about all of the other services that the court the court supplies as well? I mean, there are other services of the court. Are these translators or interpreters available, to stand behind the counter, or can they be summoned? Not summoned, but can they be called upon, or is it like the luck of the draw if there's somebody happen to be in the building at the time?
Well, we do on certain days, for example, the Chuukese interpreting, we have a block schedule so that, sometimes they're going from one courtroom to another.
Yeah.
So that we can utilize them to the best extent possible. But for our full-time court interpreter, Will Stinnett, who provides classes. So he has a full schedule of what he does.
Oh, okay, and
Yes.
he's always on property as
Yes.
well. So if you need somebody down at
Yes.
somebody to pick up a court clearance, there's always someone. Well, that guy's just
We do.
running the court.
For situations non-courtroom related, we have a bilingual list. So some court staff are bilingual.
Yeah, bilingual.
So we can call upon them
Okay.
Tagalog and say, this client is asking where the restroom is or which courtroom is here.
Yeah.
Because they're already staff at the court. We
Yeah.
can call.
Okay, so tell me how we can register. What's the first thing that, I mean, you know, because the phones are going to be ringing off the hook for you now. Where can people register? What do they have to do at first? I mean, do they have to have like a clean, you know, police record or any of that kind of stuff? Are you,
The application is the first thing. Please go online to www.guamcourts.org,
Okay.
and you can click on information, and our court interpreter application is there. If they download it and submit it to the clerk's office before August 21st, and we can do the background check, make sure
is
there's
that
no
what you
felony.
do have to do? I mean, they have to meet some sort of criteria.
Yes.
So
And
they have to have a clean record?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they'll be invited to attend our training September 8th and 9th.
How long is the train? It's 2 days?
2 days.
And that's really where you sort of get like a full-on, quick, you know, cliff note?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a test they take at the
And
end.
they take
Oh,
a test on the
okay.
2-day training.
All right, all right.
What do you do in this situation,
All right.
and so forth.
Okay, so go to your website, or no, do you accept phone calls or no?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
They can call our phone number,
Which is
475-3299.
Okay, and then just give me a quick list of languages that you're looking for.
We have American Sign Language. Right now we have 17 languages.
Okay.
Cantonese, Chamorro, Chuukese, Japanese, Korean, Kazrayan, Mandarin, Palawan, Pohnpeian, Russian. Well, no longer Russian, so
Right.
we're looking for Russian.
Yeah.
Satoalese, Tagalog, Ulithian, Vietnamese, Woliayan, and Yapese, the main islands.
So if
Yeah.
you speak any of these languages, this is what you need to do. Give them a call, go on the website. There could be something in it for you, at least the service to the courts, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I appreciate you ladies coming in. Thank you so much.
for
That was very, I
Thank you,
never knew.
Patty.
I never knew. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. Now I feel a little bit smarter. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the radio.